From collapsing birth rates to collapsing jobs, Uranus and Taurus shook American life as we've known it. Here's what happened between 2018 and 2025 and why it matters now more than ever. Uranus is the planet of shock, rebellion, disruption, and radical change. Taurus, on the other hand, rules stability, money, land, food, our bodies, our values. And since 2018, Uranus has been shaking up America's fifth and sixth houses, having to do with pleasure, children, health, labor, and service. The goal, well, the highest purpose of this energy would have been to destabilize what's outdated, expose what's broken, and force change, whether people are ready or not. Let's start with talking about this fifth house. This is the realm of fertility, creativity, children, and cultural joy. What happened when Uranus was going through this house? Well, we experienced a sharp drop in birth rates, especially post-2020. And this was surrounded by concerns over mRNA technology and fertility disruption. Then came the migrant children invasion. Remember that? Oh, we're still dealing with that. This is when a wave of minors were placed in strange, chaotic systems under the guise of humanitarian aid, while trafficking accusations multiplied, along with, misplaced children, right? During this time frame, we also saw an attack upon, or really the collapse of the American creative spirit, where you have platforms like this one turning creators into commodities, and then we saw algorithms replacing art and organic reach, and we had censorship killing authenticity. Side note, as a content creator myself, I experienced that fallout. It was brutal. I used to make a livable income on YouTube, and now what I'm doing is just pouring it out for humanity with my Aquarian Sun, Mercury, Midheaven in the 10th house. What I do is part of my calling, and I don't make any money off of it. And that's the reality for content creators post this transit. Now, if we get into also celebrities, because, fifth house has to do with celebrities and the elite. We're looking at exposure here that Uranus through Taurus brought out, where we saw the Epstein and Diddy scandals being brought out with this fifth house transit. These taboos were being brought to light, having to do with sex, abuse, power, and yes, the exploitation of minors. Then, when Uranus finally moved into the sixth house of public health, jobs, and, the working class, we saw that COVID mandates were forced. And this forced out thousands of nurses, soldiers, and essential workers who refused the what. And, many during this time we saw received dishonorable discharges, lost pensions, and some of them simply vanished from the system. Hospitals and schools during this time were gutted, not just by virus policy, but by ideological warfare. We saw drag queen story time in elementary schools. We saw teachers pushing agendas over education, and we saw parents labeled as domestic terrorists for speaking out and questioning this. Meanwhile, we saw, millions of jobs came back post-COVID, but they went to migrants, often with lower pay, and we saw native-born Americans pushed out, censored, left in gig work limbo. If not homeless, we had a homelessness crisis of Americans and veterans. And again, let's not forget the creative class, because when we're talking about these fifth and sixth houses, we're looking at working class people, creatives, many of which saw their incomes tank when doing work on these platforms that were throttling their visibility and flooding the algorithm with corporate-friendly voices. So Uranus and Taurus rocked public services, the school systems, the healthcare system, agriculture, city infrastructure. We saw a lot of red states flooded with migrants, while urban blue cities became war zones, collapsing any kind of sense of order. So remember, Taurus rules resources, and Uranus brought in chaos of those resources. We saw baby formula shortages, we saw food inflation, we saw supply chain shocks, and we saw housing unaffordability. Even the way that we defined labor changed. We've seen the rise of remote work, AI displacement, gig jobs, the gig economy without any benefits. And our society, which is built upon this working class, well, it was made unstable. And let me be clear, it's not necessarily that the energies create this. We have free will. The energies are fated, but the way we respond to these fated energies is our free will. So we could use this energy to innovate, but the lower response is to destabilize things to a point that is not functional. Now that Uranus is in its final degrees of Taurus, Uranus is giving us one last warning. If your sense of security is false, it's going to crack. If your work, your wealth, your wellness depends on false systems, this is your sign to pivot. Because on July 7th, 2025, Uranus enters Gemini, where it will stay for 8 years, moving through America's 6th and 7th houses. And that's when the war over minds, media, and relationships begins. Truth will likely fracture during this time. AI will likely rise. And the battle between connection and control will go full throttle. So if you think the last 7 years were wild, wait until Uranus hits Gemini, because the real information war is just now beginning. Follow me for part 2 for my full breakdown of Uranus and Gemini and what it means for America now through 2033. The system is not going to survive this next shock wave, but you can. Get ready.